Nice to be back. A couple of announcements. We'll send out an email tomorrow. The August 6th Tenzo Kyokan seasonal brunch feast gathering is now happening on Saturday, August 5th instead of Sunday, August 6th. It's my mistake and I apologize, and I hope it doesn't prevent anyone from coming, and maybe we'll allow others to come. Seasonal food. It's the best we can. Let's just bring beautiful seasonal food to share. And if you're not here in Sonoma County, wherever you are, bring cactus flowers or whatever tickles your delight. And for those who come on Thursdays, they've requested that we park here, that we park in the parking lot across the way and come down the walk by the building, because they're putting in a new bench by the bathroom. And if you didn't get to go to the bathroom today, if you're at home, please. And here it's locked, but there's a bathroom over there that you could use. Okay, so we are going to, there aren't so many copies of Tenzo Kyokan left here, which I take as good news, that maybe people wanted to take them home with them. But you could buddy up, and Gretchen's going to put it on shared screen, and we're going to do number 4.
Yeah, it's
the Dogen, Tenzo Kyokan, and we'll just chant it.
There was 600.
Oh, and while she's doing that, I'll say, which was the most important thing that I wanted to say, is thank you to everybody for taking such good care of things. And thank you to Debbie, and thank you to Rachel, and thank you to Ellen. It's wonderful to have so many beautiful voices. So.
Did you say 5?
4. Okay. When I was at Tai Tong Monastery, the position of cook was held by a Yang. One day, after the midday meal, I saw the cook in front of the Buddha hall drying mushrooms in the sun. He carried a pair of bamboo staff in his hand, but had no hat on his head. The sun was hot, the ground tiles were hot, and sweat streamed over him as he worked diligently to dry the mushrooms. He was suffering a bit. With his backbone bent like a bow and his shaggy eyebrows, he resembled a crane. I approached and asked the cook his age. He said 68 years. I said, "Why do you not use some assistance?" He said, "Other people are not me." I said, "Venerable sir, you are right, but the sun is so hot. Why are you doing this now in the scorching sun?" And the cook said, "If I do not do it now, when else can I do it?" I took my leave. As I walked down along the corridor, I began to realize the true significance of the cook's job. Dogen in the Tenzo Kyokan has 2 stories about particular Tenzos that taught him, moved him through actually pretty brief encounters. So I don't want to skip over that Dogen is telling us, please pay attention to the pots and where the pots go and how you handle things, and the sand and the rice, and pay attention to the human beings that are also part of the Tenzo Kyokan and part of cooking our lives. I'm going to do one Tenzo today, and I'll do the second Tenzo on Thursday. I just want to note, because Dogen sometimes, often is noted for his fierce, strict meditation. But he also tells us about particular people that moved him. And that feels really, really important to me, because we are teaching each other all the time. And in Sangha, we are every bit the pots and the pans and the sand and the rice and the ingredients. So I want to look at this. It occurred to me. I'm going to do some commentary from Cooking Your Life, and I also am going to, Rachel kind of inspired me, well, and Ellen too, in Gardening at the Dragon's Gate, At Work in the Wild and Cultivated World, Wendy Johnson. Because you can't eat without vegetables, and you can't have vegetables without the earth and gardening, and both are intimately connected and interconnected to our tradition. I thought we talked about Ed Brown. We brought forward, I'll bring forward Wendy Johnson. It's really beautiful to me in this tradition that it's not, the point isn't to turn out people who have stamps of you look like a Zen Buddhist because you followed the protocol and now we all look the same. The most beautiful thing about this is that every dish turns out completely differently and uniquely tasty, and that's, if there's a true purpose, it's for each person to be unique, for Amy to be completely Amy, and for Julie to be completely Julie, and Gretchen, and Rachel, and Susan, and although Zen can look sometimes rather strict and form-oriented, the human beings are amazing and actually rather colorful. So please don't hold back your life force. Be yourself and find out what that is, because I think we sit on a cushion along with the whole world so that a sunflower can be a sunflower and a violet can be a violet, and each person can find out who they are. And Ed Brown is a very unusual, eccentric human being, and so is Wendy Johnson. Now, I, of course, am not. I'm just... please, find out, allow the world and everything to come through you. So, in this case, he says, other people are not me. If I do not do it now, when else can I do it? So I want to read, first of all, Uchiyama's commentary, or parts of it, in here, where I think there's a part of this that what he stresses is really, really important, which is more the emptiness absolute teachings. And you have to do it. Nobody else is going to do it for you. Nobody else is going to get up in the morning. Nobody else is going to sit in the cushion. If you bring a dish on August 5th, nobody else is going to cook that dish for you. And thinking that somebody else is going to save you is actually just going to create suffering. We bring up all of our resentment, our anger, our victimhood, our sit upright, present, here. And don't ever forget that we're sitting along with all beings, and all beings are sitting along with us, and that it's completely interrelated dance with everything. So I'm going to bring forward Uchiyama, and then I'm going to bring forward Wendy Johnson. Because Wendy Johnson, when I first came to Zen Center, as Dogen was influenced by Yang, I was influenced by Wendy Johnson. If Wendy Johnson hadn't been there, being a gardener, a deeply Zen practitioner whose passion was gardening, I'm not sure that I would be here today. And I'll bet each one of you have people like that in your life. Somehow the relationship made it possible to keep entering the gates of what's the truth of your own heart. Some people needed probably a mentor who was a really strict Zen form person. I needed a wild gardener. So we each find what we find. But let's start with Uchiyama here. So he says in chapter 11, it's entitled Living Through the Life of the Self. He begins to briefly summarize what we have been discussing so far, which I would say we have been. We have to live out our own lives, and we have to learn to encounter whatever comes up without avoiding difficulties. This is the spirit of magnanimity, which Dogen Zenji has referred to as Daishin, or big mind. And to meet all the experiences of our lives with our eyes wide open, and to act with a true sense of caring for them all, is referred to as Roshin, or parental mind. So the three minds are magnanimous, or big mind, kind, or parental mind, and joyful mind. So all of this, if there's any point to it, it is that these is to cultivate these qualities, and that these qualities are innate. And so they spontaneously more and more arise the more that we find alignment with living through the life of the self. So then he says, Dogen wrote an elaborate detail about these spirits, and two of them are the two Tenzos, examples that he brought from his travels in China. First of all, I would like to take up the discussion about the Tenzo on Mount Taitong. The core of this story centers around two passages. Other people are not me, and if I do not do it, my work now, when else can I do it? So now I think I want to read his little commentary here, because somehow it feels important what he's saying, and I also want to do a commentary on his commentary. He says, I can best illustrate the attitude behind these passages by way of a letter I received recently from an old man who had been hospitalized and had to have someone write the letter for him. The man was suffering from paralysis of over half his body, and in addition had been rendered almost blind from cataracts. He wrote that in a very short time, he would undoubtedly become totally blind and might even die. But whenever he thought about death, he became dreadfully afraid. He no longer had any joy or hope in life and was completely bewildered as how to cope with his situation. Better rush in and save him, right? Uchiyama says, what else can I say other than this situation is truly a pitiable one? Yet beyond that, what could I have possibly said or done for this person? What could I tell him that would have given him any comfort? The time is not too far off when I too will be in that or a similar condition, and then who will come and suffer in my place? We have no real choice but to live through it by ourselves. This absolute nature of life is something we must thoroughly recognize. From the Satipatthana Sutta, the Suttanipata Sutta, there is no way to gain emancipation through another. There is no way I can emancipate people suffering in this world. The only way for you to be able to cross over the stream of your passions is to know the highest truth of life. Don't usually say that, do we? That's why I wanted to do this, because it's in Buddhism, there's the wings of wisdom and compassion, and you need both of them. And if you miss this wisdom part of it, it just becomes compassion becomes too mushy, and I think we're very conditioned to want to jump in and try to fix and save or say something or do something. So don't skip that. And it takes both wings. So I'm going to bring forward Uchiyama, and then I'm going to bring forward, not surprisingly, Wendy Johnson, who might have a slightly different thing to say, but they're not separate. As difficult as it may seem to be, the highest ultimate truth in life is grounded in the fact that there are no favorable or adverse circumstances, no fortune or misfortune. All there is the life of the self, big mind. Once we begin to wish that someone would come along to get us out of our mess, you probably don't do that. Or blaming yourself for your mess or whatever you're doing, running around in that little loop. We start fantasizing all the more, and the situation looms even darker. Eventually, things close in around us, causing us to begin to feel paranoid. When we thoroughly understand the attitude underlying these remarks made by the Tenzo, other people are not me, and if I do not do it now, when else can I do it? When we understand that there is no stability to be found in life other than living it out as it is, we will be able to comprehend the reasoning behind the principle of becoming emancipated from our pain and suffering by just being resolved to live through it as it is. Don't think anybody's going to save you or there's somebody to save. Fierce. The degree of separation from the reality of life appears as suffering and struggle. What we should be truly grateful for is that no matter how much we suffer and agonize, it is only suffering and agonizing going on in our minds, and when we die, this mind too passes away. We do learn that on the cushion, dropping body and mind. We do. This isn't intellectual. This is palpable. Just die at the end of each exhale. Just let go. Let go. And whatever your impulse is to go in and try to alleviate the suffering of others, take a breath first and find out how much you're just trying to alleviate your own suffering. And you're jumping in out of your own confusion. No matter what happens to us in our lives, there is no real alternative other than to live through it then and there by ourselves. This is an inescapable reality. When you die, there is nobody going to be dying besides you and the whole world. Don't think anybody's going to save you. I cannot imagine anything more important in our lives than to completely resolve ourselves to the absolute nature of this truth. And if I had come to San Francisco Zen Center and Green Gulch Farm when I was 26 years old, and there hadn't been someone like Wendy Johnson there to mirror and to help me by being who she was, like the Tenzo was there with Dogen. Dogen needed that Tenzo, and that Tenzo actually needed Dogen, because there is this beautiful thing that happens. If Wendy Johnson hadn't been there, who knows what I would have done. Just as when you walk into a Sangha, if there isn't someone there that feels like there's some kind of affinity, it's all about relationship and any relationship, but just keep taking the backward step. Here we are. What's true? What is it to really help? And what is it? You are not me. anything I think about constants, if I do it through my mind and my conditioning, is a projection, and then I will just miss. But if I can be here, dropping body and mind, then we can each be present, moment after moment, and truly help from a place of mutuality and receptivity. And as Wendy Johnson calls it in her introduction, we go into the tangle. We untangle the tangle by going into the tangle. It's too easy to do the wisdom side of it, which is I'm going to stay outside of this because it's really messy in there. The compassion side of it says go into the tangle. Go into the mess. Know it's going to be messy. And how do you be upright? And know that if I do not do this now, when else can I do it? Just show up, be here with circumstances. I'm looking at faces and sensing there are people here trying to be with suffering. So I'm going to read you just a Wendy story because it's just such a completely different taste. When I was a brand new gardener, I planted my first bed of sweet corn at Tassajara Zen Mountain Center, San Francisco Zen Center's training monastery deep in the Ventana wilderness east of Big Sur in Central California. I was working by myself in the upper garden, wrapped with concentration. I stretched a string line the full length of the 65-foot row where I was planting the corn, and just under this line I scratched out a 3-inch deep furrow. The string showed me where to plant and kept me straight. I filled my fist with dry, shriveled kernels of bantam sweet corn, and every 2 inches or so I dropped a kernel of corn into the furrow. Kind of very Zen-like. Okay, I got it. Got the furrow, it's straight, I'm putting the corn in, I'm all by myself, I'm doing it, I'm taking care of things, I'm doing it now. Who else is going to do this if not me in this moment? I wasn't sure that I would have enough seed, so I left the furrow uncovered until the entire line was planted. I was working on my hands and knees, head down and deep under the spell of the ancient ritual of planting seed. I imagined green blades of grass rising up out of the black skirt of the ground. Finally, the line was sown, and I looked up from my supplicant's crouch. Wendy is amazing. A rotund Stellar's J was at the bottom of my corn furrow, hopping fearlessly down the line, gobbling up each of my carefully sown kernels of sweet corn. The bold Zaftig bird paused for a moment, fixed me with her bright eye, and continued to feast. And my life as a gardener cracked open and took root. I think the same thing happened to Dogen. His life as a practitioner cracked open because he had this encounter with the Tenzo and his mushrooms in China. That wasn't his homeland. But it might be a Tenzo, a wise and old Zen practitioner, or it might be a Stellar J. Pay attention. What I realized that summer day was fundamental. Gardening, life, kitchen, is about awareness and relationship. It's about awareness and relationship. Consequential relationship. It's also about taking a stand and standing by your principles. And at the same time, it's about giving up control and learning from your mistakes. Nobody else can do this. You enter and you enter and you enter. This hasn't been an easy lesson for me. When I recovered from my stunned shock in the Tassajara corn furrow, I leapt to my feet, bellowing war cries at the retreating backside of the fat corn-fed jay. And muttering under my breath, I redistributed the remaining corn seed in the row and stamped, closed the furrow. Today, 30-odd years later, probably now 50, I'm still pursuing blue jays and they are still pursuing me. You can't get out of this. Okay, just a couple more things from Wendy. She says meditation practice is grounded in compassion and wisdom. for myself and others. Qualities that arise naturally with wholehearted practice. It's big mind, kind mind, joyful mind. On my simple altar at home, I have a small figure of the Bodhisattva Kuan Yin, the awakened transformation of compassion. Her dark robes billow with wind as she stands on the back of a fierce dragon whose scaly tail is fused to Kuan Yin's robes as they negotiate the high seas of birth and death together. Meditation takes gumption. It is not fussy. I was trying to think about whether to make a commentary about how Wendy and I used to laugh with the fussiness of Zendo things sometimes, and we were just down there with dirt underneath our fingers. But everybody needs something different, and some people, when they do their Zen robes, it's like you watch, and it's like it's you're watching the beauty and order of the whole universe. Mm-hmm. And you also need messy, wild people. You need the whole shebang. Meditation is larger than any of this. It's grounded in simple curiosity and in the determination to know your heart and mind inside out and in the present moment. To do this, you go directly into the tangle of your life. Sit down in the middle of it and allow the steady stream of your breath to carry you home. And at the end of the introduction, when the Buddha first began to teach, a magical deity visited him in the night. Some people get Tenzo visits, some people get magical deity visits. And asked this question to Buddha. The inner tangle and the outer tangle, this generation is entangled in a tangle. So I ask you, who succeeds in untangling this tangle? The Buddha's answer was simple and direct. The one who sits down in the middle of his or her life and looks with attention, calm, and resolve has a chance to untangle the tangle and to relieve suffering. This does not mean that oversimplifying or setting up strict rules and regulations is the answer. It could mean, other people are not me. If I do not do it now, when else can I do it? But if you make it a strict rule, and you can't be responsive and enter the situation and let the situation enter you as it is, you'll miss the whole world. As Wendy says, it's awareness and relationship. Gardens are far stronger than any notions about them. Life is far stronger than any notions about them. They elude the richest vows and principles and bend away from all ideas. Instead, I, Wendy Johnson, and Dogen left home. He did a wild, dangerous sea voyage from Japan to China in pursuit of, he wanted to understand and know how to practice. And then he wandered and met teachers who really, he felt to him like, this isn't it, this isn't it, this isn't it. And then a true human being showed up in front of him. And something turned. In the same way that the rice and the stones and the pots and the pans and the blue jays and everything turn us moment after moment. We just have to go into the tangle and join the knot of entwined life. Kind of be fun to sit down in a dialogue while we're kind of having one with these different ways. Practice is you just keep turning it. You just keep turning it. And you look at one facet and what Uchiyama and the absolute. And nobody's going to save you. And don't you try to save somebody else, because then you're just going to project or get lost in your own stuff. And enter, and you turn it again. And enter. Because what else are you going to do? And if it's not you who does it, who else is going to do it? And be willing to be messy. How else are you going to cook a good, tasty meal? you have to kind of make a mess to do it. And the dish may not turn out anything like what you thought you were making, but something will happen because you risked your whole life. You, each one of us, risking our whole life moment after moment. And whatever turns up, turns up. So, so I thought it might be interesting just to break people up into groups, and you can talk about any of this that comes up, but I thought it would be interesting. I'll bet everybody can think of someone who turned